The economic freedom fighters in KwaZulu-Natal say that all 8 deputy mayors who served under IFP-led municipalities have resigned from their positions. And this follows an instruction given by their party leader, Julius Malema, last week. Malema said that his party had cut ties with the IFP in all municipalities across the country. Now, this move could see the IFP losing control of some of its municipalities in the province.
The mandate is clear. Anywhere we see the ugly head of the IFP, we chop the head. Anywhere we see the myopic, directionless IFP, we chop the head. We go for them.
The Economic Freedom Fighters has officially ended its working relationship with the IFP in the province. Municipalities such as Mtubatuba, Zululand, Umhlathuze and Nongoma are affected by this move. The EFF says this decision was informed by the IFP's refusal to let the party govern Umhlathuze, which is one of the province's economic hubs.
We wanted to rescue that municipality. We came into talks with them to say, look, you are governing one of the 2 economic hubs of KZN, in particular the Newcastle and the Umhlathuze municipality. So give us one economic hub as well. And specifically so, we're gunning for that Umhlathuze, which they refused.
The party says this decision does not automatically mean that it will now be working with the ANC in hung municipalities. It says talks are underway with other smaller parties in all affected councils to see what agreement can be made. The province has 21 hung municipalities. Simpiwe Makanya, SABC News, Durban.
Well, for some analysis, we're now joined by Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, who's the Director at the Center for Advancement of Non-Racialism and Democracy at the Nelson Mandela University in Gqeberha. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Peter, and good evening to your viewers.
So we've been watching with great interest the horse trading that's been taking place in our municipalities and the change of guard, mayors being deposed and new ones being put up. And as citizens, we've been quite surprised by some of the things that we saw. Let's talk a little bit about the IFP and their decision to divorce the IFP. What does that say about the state of coalitions in South Africa?
Thank you very much for the question, Peter. Maybe as a point of departure, I must say that what our political parties are doing is morally wrong. Be it the EFF, be it any other political party, is morally wrong because you cannot enter a coalition today and then tomorrow you sing a different tune. But very unfortunately, these parties have not broken any law because none exists. In other words, there is no law that guides these coalition agreements. So which means that it's possible for a party to forge an agreement in the morning and then in the afternoon take a U-turn and say, we are no longer working together with that particular party. This is exactly what the EFF is doing. It is morally wrong, but they've not broken any law because these coalitions are not sustainable. We've seen this happening in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro. We've seen this happening in Gauteng, in the case of Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni, and of course, Tshwane. And then this thing is continuing across the country. So which means that we have a serious problem with these coalitions. They are not sustainable because we don't seem to understand how coalition politics works. I normally say it's better to have a pre-election coalition than to have a post-election coalition because you are reading from different scripts and your manifestos and your policies don't speak to one another. That is why we're having this problem.
Do the parties have a mandate to do what they're doing, even though it's illegal? It's not illegal, that it is legal what they're doing. Do they have a mandate? Should there be some kind of going back to the voters to say, this is what we plan to do. Are you happy with it?
Ordinarily, that is the road they are supposed to take, but unfortunately, that is not what is happening. Normally, what happens, Peter, is that you have an election, before an election, you go to the public and then you try to woo voters, and then you explain to them what your manifesto is all about, and you promise them what you are going to deliver on as soon as you assume the position of power. Then comes election day, you don't get what you thought you were going to get, and then you are forced to go into a coalition. Very unfortunately, these coalition agreements are happening in the boardrooms. So the politicians don't go back to the electorate and say, you have given us a mandate, but the mandate you gave us is not enough for us to run this municipality or to run this provincial government or to run this national government. Therefore, we are requesting that you allow us to forge an agreement with Party X. They don't do that. They just unilaterally decide in the boardroom as to what will work best for them, and they are only thinking about their own positions. That is why, Peter, even if you have 1 or 2 seats, you will make a lot of noise saying that you want to be deputy mayor, you want to be deputy president, you want to be municipal manager, you want to be a CFO. You just decide what position you want with your 1 or 2 seats. Obviously, that can't be right, but unfortunately, in the absence of any legislation, you cannot fault these political parties and say they are wrong, because it's only morally wrong, but constitutionally, they have not broken any law. And it's not something that is new, and it's going to happen for as long as we don't have any legislation in that regard.
Let's take a look at the EFF. They wanted Mhlathuze, and I just wonder, is it an unreasonable request if you're in a partnership with the party that they take the bulk of it, and they've asked to take control of one economic hub?
That is a very interesting question, Peter. But normally what happens is that such a discussion is supposed to have happened before they could sign a deal. There are 4 economic hubs in KwaZulu-Natal. We have Umsunduzi, we have Itegu, we have Mhlathuze, then we have Newcastle. Then, of course, Umsunduzi and Itegu had fallen into the hands of the ANC, or at least the ANC had retained those 2. Then we are left with Newcastle, we are left with Mhlathuze. And we are the IFP. And let's remember that the ANC had the largest number of votes, but not enough for them to meet the 50+1 threshold. Therefore, it meant that they could not run the municipality. If there was legislation, the ANC should have been given the first opportunity to constitute a council. But in the absence of that legislation, it meant that smaller parties could come together and then run the municipality or form the council, which is what has happened in the case of the IFP. The IFP was not number 1, but then because it managed to persuade other political parties, then it got to these municipalities. But ordinarily, what the EFF was asking is not something impossible if it was negotiated at the very first stage of those negotiations. But to come up with that request at the tail end of the discussion will defeat the purpose, and by and large, it's not going to survive. So in this case, I think that both parties negotiated in bad faith. The IFP wanted to take these municipalities, which is what all other parties would want to do. The EFF wanted to disappoint the ANC, and therefore they forgot to think about what is in it for them when they join hands with the IFP. Midstream, they then decide, okay, let us have Mhlathuze, and when that doesn't work out, then they decide that they are going to cut that marriage short. So I don't think that is fair on both parties. They were supposed to have done the spade work at the word go, not at the tail end of the discussion.
As a voter, I vote in a ward in a particular municipality, and the issues there are for that area. Help us understand when a party then says, if we disagree in this municipality, we're withdrawing from every municipality that we've got any partnership with you in other parts of the country. This is not national politics, surely.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But I think, Peter, it comes back to the point I was making earlier on, that parties are supposed to understand, first of all, how coalition politics works. That is the point of departure. If you don't understand how coalition politics works, you are going to make all these mistakes one after the other. Under normal circumstances, if we disagree in municipality A for a specific reason, let us cut ties in that municipality. But in this case, the decision of the EFF is that because we disagree with you, then it means we're cutting ties in all the other municipalities where we've supported you, which is why then all 8 members who were deputy mayors in those municipalities were given an instruction that they must cut ties with the IFP with immediate effect. Ordinarily, that is not supposed to have happened. If the problem was, for example, Tumhlatuze, then it means that the change should have happened there. But unfortunately, it means that the problem is more than you and I can understand. Because when the EFF made that pronouncement, they didn't spell out the exact reason as to why they are cutting ties with the IFP. It's only now that we are hearing that at some point they wanted to take control of Mhlatuze, as Mr. Twala in fact considered that indeed they wanted to take control of Mhlatuze, and that did not work out. So you cannot then cut ties in all other municipalities just because we have a problem with this one municipality which wanted to take control of. But I think their argument will be because the IFP has in fact reneged on the agreement we had reached, therefore we are punishing them not just in this municipality but in other municipalities. The disadvantage for the EFF is that the IFP will still find other partners and will still be able to retain at least some of these municipalities, even if not all of them. Because truth be told, the IFP did very well in the 2021 local government election, and they had a number of municipalities which they won on their own. Then there were those municipalities wherein they needed these smaller parties for them to be able to run those municipalities, of course, at the expense of the ANC.
So where does that leave the EFF if the IFP is able to continue in the majority of those municipalities? The EFF is not saying that they're joining hands with the ANC, but mathematically it doesn't look like they can go any other way. Where does that leave the party that spoke so ill of the ANC that they're going back there, if that's what ends up happening?
That is a $1 million question, Peter. Not only for this year, but for next year as well. Because what then happens in this case is that there is an issue of trust. If you are party Y and the IFP was party X, we have seen that when the EFF had an arrangement with the IFP, that arrangement did not work out. Then you are the next in line. You are party Y. You want to forge relations with the EFF. The question is, for how long are you going to sustain that coalition? So there will be the element of trust. There will be trust deficit, if I may put it that way. There will be trust deficit in as far as the EFF is concerned, not just for the remainder of this year, but also going into 2024 when we'll be having national and provincial government elections. Because from the look of things at the moment, it looks like there is no party that is likely to get the 50+1 threshold, which is required for that party to run the government on its own. In that eventuality, then it means that either the ANC or the DA will have to find another friend to be able to run the country. Now, the question will be, can the DA forge relations with the EFF, given what has happened in Gauteng? Can the ANC and the EFF find each other and hope that the relationship will be sustained? Those are some of the questions that will have to be asked. So basically, it means that the leadership of the EFF will now have to sit back and say, of all the 14 political parties that we have right now, we don't know what's going to happen in 2024 because there might be new kids on the block, and there might also be some independent candidates. But if the current status quo remains, then it means that the EFF will have to look at other options. I understand that they are currently negotiating with the ANC. I'm not too sure how far that will go. But then, of course, it means that the issue of trust deficit is what the EFF will have to deal with.
Professor Mngomezulu, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much indeed. We always greatly appreciate your insights on the program. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, who's a director at the Center for the Advancement of Non-Racialism and Democracy at the Nelson Mandela University, Gqeberha, speaking to us about the IFP and the EFF getting divorced and now seeking new partnerships to move ahead and what those consequences might be.